Greetings distinguished followers, chosen chimp here, going a little sideways in this video, a little off-piste, a little, well, ouch. Do you remember in my classic season 7 review video when I talked about how some of the stunts in that season were off the charts? Well, I mean, yeah, you got dudes jumping off of high places, people flinging themselves into walls. You want to see people rolling down a hill, then this is the season for you. And crazy Doctor Who stunts weren't exactly exclusive to Season 7. Season 8 alone also has its share of high adrenaline bumps. The whole gunfight in Terror of the Autons is rife with them. And you get that scene in The Claws of Axos where one of the characters pretty much somersaults out of shot and away from an explosion. And in choosing such examples, I'm only talking tip of the iceberg. I remember doing some research for a video I made on the Black Orchid and finding out that one of the stuntmen in that story, a one Gareth Milne, dived off the top of a mansion, nearly missed the soft landing and both his legs hit the ground. Fortunately, no serious injury. Stunts in classic Doctor Who were often mad, shocking to look at, and performed by some of the ballsiest veterans of the stunt industry. But there was one stunt in particular that caught my attention, and that is one performed in the final episode of The Ambassadors of Death. After seeing this, I just needed to find out more. Who was this guy that performed this stunt, and how did he pull it off without seriously injuring himself? What I discovered was positively shocking. So the Doctor and Liz are held prisoner in a bunker with Regan, a guard, and 3 nuclear aliens in spacesuits. Just another day at the office. Units storm the gates. Regan sends his guard up to the top of the staircase to face them. Brigadier opens the door just as the guard reaches the top of the staircase. The guard is shot point blank and up close, a shot that even Brigadier can't miss. The guard, or should I say the stuntman, stumbles back, falls backwards down the stairs, and then does a backward roll over his head on the hard staircase. Look, I just want to say at this point that I think all Doctor Who stunts are impressive, but there's usually a more obvious suggestion of safety involved in them. And that's not to diminish the bravery of people who jump off of high places, because I can't even stand on top of my bin without getting vertigo. But you can tell that there's obviously some kind of crash mat or soft landing just outside of shot. And when it involves an actor landing on their back, then that's kind of more to do with being trained to take a break fall or to take a bump. Perhaps it's because of my love of professional wrestling that raised alarm bells for this particular stunt. I've seen, read and heard of way too many horror stories about people landing on their heads or necks at awkward angles and the devastating effects that can have. This looks something that is probably too dangerous to be performed in today's Doctor Who, which of course is a good thing because we don't want people getting hurt. This obviously is supposed to look haphazardly. It looks haphazardly. Either something went wrong or this guy really knew what he was doing. So who is he? Time to dig deep. And yeah, when I say dig deep, I mean visit Wiki Fandom. But as in previous instances, Wiki Fandom could only tell me some of the story. At first glance, I thought it was this guy, Roy Scammell, something of a bona fide legend of the stunt industry who is credited for numerous stunts in The Ambassadors of Death, including doubling up for Caroline John. I'm guessing for this cliffhanger scene where Liz is seen dangling off of a bridge over a river. He also played a scientist in The Ambassadors of Death and was in Inferno. But it didn't quite match up. But then there was this. In the uncredited cast list, a credit for a certain Double for Heavy, which was played by a Mr. Alf Joint. Turns out Alf Joint was also in Colony in Space, and he arranged the stunts in Battlefield. Who could forget the fight scenes in that one? But for those who don't know, Alf Joint's career as a stuntman extended far and wide, and in no place more prominent than in cinema. He is credited for stunts in Star Wars, Superman, and according to fandom also doubling up as Sean Connery in Goldfinger. But at the time of recording this fandom entry isn't entirely on the pulse, because he had a more significant and iconic role in Goldfinger. as the Mexican thug Capungo. That's right, folks. Alf Joint is the guy at the start of the film who Sean Connery electrocutes in the bath. He's the positively shocking guy. Could this really be the same guy that falls down the stairs in Ambassadors of Death? Well, yeah, it is. At the time of recording this, there's no real high-quality footage of this episode, and this is the most credible freeze frame that I could get of him. He literally appears for this one singular shot, which to me makes perfect sense, because he's a stuntman here to do a stunt, he's not an actor. The guy watching over the Doctor and Liz in the previous scene is a completely different dude. When I place this freeze frame alongside the fight scene in Goldfinger, I can instantly see how this definitely has to be the same guy, albeit with a 7-year age gap. The facial features match, the same lines on their cheeks, identical moustaches to boot. I'm gonna call this a match. At the beginning of this project, I got it into my head that this was more of a clumsy tumble rather than an expert manoeuvre performed by one of the veterans of the stunt business, but what the dickens do I know? I figured it was time to get some outside help. After digging a little bit deeper for facts on Alf Joint, I quickly discovered this YouTube channel, Behind The Stunts. Created in its entirety by stunt historian Jon Auty, Behind The Stunts is the ultimate place to go for detailed analysis of some of the famous and less famous stunts of film and TV. The channel also includes interviews with famous personalities of the stunt industry and the latest news surrounding the stunt world of today. Jon's breakdowns of the stunts seen in some of our most treasured movies has the kind of detail that I love getting lost in. I got completely hooked on his Raiders of the Lost Ark video the other night. If you have even the faintest interest in how stunts work, check out his channel. I've added links to the YouTube channel, podcast and social media in the description of this video. So I reached out to Jon hoping for some clarification on what exactly it was I was looking at here, and almost immediately I received an extremely enthusiastic reply. And this, folks, is where the men are separated from the boys in terms of knowledge and expertise and understanding something properly. And there I was thinking this was just a guy rolling over the back of his head. It's a good job I went to somebody who knew what they were talking about.
Hello and welcome. My name's Jon Auty and I'm from Behind The Stunts. Ash, the chosen chimp, has asked me to take a look at a particular moment from the Ambassadors of Death. Now this involves a stuntman well known right across action adventure, television, film, theatre and advertising. He is Alf Joint. Alf Joint you may know from Goldfinger. The pre-title sequence, he's the guy who ends up in the bathtub and is electrocuted by Connery, giving him the option to go shocking. He's also the milk tray man. Well, not actually the milk tray man, but he is the guy who in the 1970s dived from the top of a cliff into the shallow surf below where a yacht was moored, just so he can drop off that rather handy box of chocolates. He's been involved in all sorts over the years, so this particular episode of Doctor Who wasn't something out of the ordinary. He's working for Derek Ware. Derek Ware, you will know, Havoc, his organisation, do a lot of stuff, practically all of the action on the series, and it's a case of running into a scene as a character, running up a flight of stairs, a small flight, going to a doorway, which is then pushed open. He's then pushed back to a certain point. He is then shot and falls down that staircase. Now, the way he does this is different to any other stairfall you may have seen, because instead of rolling all the way down, it's a relatively short flight. Therefore, one backflip is enough. But how does he do it? Well, firstly, look at his costume. His costume is 3 layers, maybe 4 layers. He's got a big jacket on over the top. He's got dark trousers, a jumper or sweater underneath. That is a covering to protect what he really has on underneath, which will be a back protector, because even though the staircase is relatively short, it could still cause him to maneuver himself in such a way that he can get injured on the way down. So he'll have a full back protector. He will also have a piece at the bottom of his spine. Often you'll find them in motorcycle leathers, racing leathers, which will just cup the underside of his coccyx, the little bone that we had when we were apes that we don't need anymore because we used to have a tail, right? Well, it's still incredibly painful if you give it a twang on anything, and this particular piece of equipment will hopefully be able to cushion that should he go down. He'll also have elbows on and probably knees as well. Now that's standard. Couldn't really afford to get away with anything else. All of the other characters in the show, they're soldiers, or there are some alien life forms which are helmeted. But apart from that, that's his job. So, the stair fall, the easiest way to understand it is that you have to get from the top to the bottom as quickly as possible. Backwards is simpler. If you go forwards, you can see what's coming and you might roll to try and avoid what's coming. If you're better on one side than the other. Stunt people have a natural bias and they try and eliminate that during the course of their careers, but you are better with maybe one side of your body than the other. If you go backwards, well, you've taken all the precautions you possibly can and you're just going to arrive at the bottom much faster than you'd anticipated. So, this particular gag, which is what they call them, means that the staircase is quite tight and the wall at the top of the staircase is quite tight. It's maybe, I would say, 10 steps in total, maybe. So he gets to the top, he gets to the doorway. When he gets to the doorway, that doorway is pushed open. It causes him to fall back, and he just starts to turn. Now, in that slight moment, he will be able to spot where the middle of that staircase is, so that he knows when he does get to his final position before he goes down the steps, he's absolutely smack bang in the middle. There's no point going one way or the other. He doesn't want to hit that wall one side, and he doesn't really want to hit the banister the other side. So he wants to be right down the middle. Note when he gets to the top of the stairs, when he is shot, he crouches down onto his hunkers, right the way down, feet flat on the floor, and he's right at the very top of that step. Which means that when he goes backwards, his feet stay planted on the top step, and he then lets himself go down the rest. Now, by the time that his legs come over his body, he must be 5 or 6 steps down already. He has slid down the first 5 or 6, and then momentum kicks in as his legs come over, and he lands rolled up as a ball at the very bottom. So that's more or less how it's done. Staircases will vary in length, and the requirements of a director will suggest that you have to come down them in various different ways. But on this occasion, that's how Alf's done it in the episode Ambassadors of Death.
As you've just seen for yourself, Jon sent me a glorious insight into the inner workings of something that only graced our screens for a handful of seconds. I checked out the Havoc stunt team as mentioned in Jon's video, and pretty much every stunt that grabbed my attention from the Pertwee era was created under their banner. A golden age of Doctor Who unto itself, albeit a slightly more obscure one. But I think it's one that deserves a lot more attention and credit. And I think the same goes for stunts in Doctor Who today, and anything else for that matter. These little pockets of excitement that take up just a fraction of the entire composite of a TV show or a movie. And yet those brief seconds are so memorable, and they're memorable because you have a person prepared to put themselves on the line for our entertainment. This has been an absolute wonderful project. I've had a great time researching this, and of course I am fully aware that I have probably completely overlooked your favourite stunt from classic Doctor Who. No, hang on, let's just do the whole of Doctor Who, start to finish. If there is a particular stunt in Doctor Who anywhere that you would like highlighted or mentioned, drop it in the comments and we'll see where it goes to there. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much to Jon Auty from Behind The Stunts. I've been Chosen Chimp. What other Doctor Who stuff would you like me to talk about? Sound off in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe. Have a good one.